Hi, this is a foreigner in the Philippines. Well, today we're going to talk about the reoccurring theme about how a Westerner, a foreigner, can come and live in the Philippines with a change of culture, drastic change of culture, and a different kind of relationship with his wife. Now, if you're a foreigner and you're making the choice to come and live in this kind of environment, believe me, you have a lot more to deal with than you think. It's all about how you've been brought up as compared with how your partner has been brought up. And in exactly the same way that everything about you and your habits and your way of dealing with things and your life is all ingrained in you, in your partner everything is the same. It's ingrained in her as well. Now, you may be looking just purely on aesthetics. Men do this more than possibly women do. Women are more likely to accept a man who's not as good looking more so than a man is willing to accept that in a woman. They always say that if two guys meet in the street and they haven't been seeing each other for a while, one says, "Yeah, I got a new girlfriend." The other guy will say, "Really, what does she look like?" Now, if two women meet in the street and they say, "I just met a new man," they say, "What does he do?" They're more interested in what he does, in how he earns a living, in what kind of life that man can offer the woman. And this is another theme that comes up very often when people are talking about how a man can come from another culture and find a woman that's so much younger than him. Not that I would know anything about that. Anyway, there's some big change that's coming for you if you're coming to the Philippines and hoping to live within a culture which is as different to yours as if you'd been dropped on the planet Mars. Because Filipinos do not think in the same way as a Westerner. Someone from the East thinks in a totally different way. And it's not going to change just because you say so. Now, I did see one particular comment on my channel. I talked about how, I think the subject was, does a Filipino love you for your money or for you? And the man said, when I have the money, they live in my culture. And if not, they should go out and earn their own money, and then they can live in their culture. In other words, he'd come here for various reasons, various agenda that he had, and he had no intention of change. Now, if that's good, and it will work if you are satisfied with a very low threshold. If your threshold of happiness is very low, that will work. Why? Because you will be much happier when you are living among happy people. Now, that may seem very, very obvious, but actually it's not to most Westerners. Most Westerners come over here and they treat themselves and their viewpoint as point zero. Point zero, my definition only. Point zero is where you consider that everything that you see, view, decide, have an opinion on is the point from which everything must be judged. Well, the rest of the world is not thinking that way. They're thinking about themselves more as point zero. So point zero is a constantly moving thing, a constantly moving state or position in life. Now, how different is the way of thinking in the East compared to the way of thinking in the West? One of the most incredible examples that I ever heard was about the American company who, and I think I may even have given this example before, but what the hell. The company were going to Japan, and they were going to pitch their product, their service, whatever it was, to the Japanese company, and it meant a lot of money. So they picked their top man, their top presenter. They went over their presentation until it was perfect. They had the computer, it pitched its screen up onto, it pitched the ideas, all the graphics up onto a large screen behind the man as he was doing his presentation. So he stood there in that room, in that conference room of the Japanese company, in front of a board of directors. And he made his pitch. And he did it perfectly. All of the graphics came up perfectly. Everything was just perfect. They'd worked everything out down to the last word, and he had rehearsed it until he knew it beautifully. And he did his job. He did a great job. 2.5 hours later, he wound up and said, "Well, gentlemen, that's our idea. That's how we think it should be done." And there was a moment of silence, and then one of the board said, "We didn't understand. Could you do it again?" A 2.5 hour presentation done perfectly the first time. And the Japanese simply said, "We didn't understand. Could you do it again?" That's the difference between the thinking in the East and the thinking in the West. Another example was that the man went out from America, very good at his job, and he went to do a deal with a Japanese company. And when he got there, they had somebody to meet him, beautiful woman who was there, perfect English, everything just perfectly dressed, beautifully turned out, with a male associate, and they wined and dined him, and then they took him to his hotel, and they made sure that everything in the room in the 5-star hotel was just perfect. And then they took him out, and they took him to a nightclub, and they showed him the town. And then the next day, they were there, and they took him out again, and they took him over to Disneyland, or whatever the Disney complex is over there. And they showed him everything. They showed him the sights, they showed him the temples, and every time he said, "Well, shouldn't we be doing business?" "Yes, sir, we will, and we will get to that." Well, he only had 2 or 3 days, and 2 or 3 days later, they still hadn't sat down and done any business at all. So now he is all thinking, what the heck is going on here? And then when they have just a few hours before he gets on his plane to return home, they bring up the idea of the business. And then they do a bum's rush through the deal, during which he doesn't handle his side of things very well, because he's now stressed out about, well, how is all of this going to work out? And he doesn't come off very well. And he returns home with less than an ideal deal. That's the difference between the East and the West thinking. They think different. How does this relate to you as an individual coming over here to marry a lovely Filipino? Well, it matters a lot. It has a lot to do with it, because you're going to come over with your learned ideas about how things should be done, and they're not going to be in sync with the land, the culture, the people that you are now living in. And if you think that you're going to be able to change them, you're wrong. It came to me like a bolt of lightning that those things that I thought I could teach my wife that would enable her to be part of the Western culture were not going to work. And this is quite a moment of truth when you find, hopefully if you finally realize this. I made my choice to come and live in this country and to integrate with this culture. So it may well be that I'm light years ahead of some of the other foreigners that come and live here. Now, why would I be light years ahead? Because I do realize that everything that I ever thought about life is not necessarily the way that it is. It's not necessarily true that everything that I think works. And I have to deal with that. Now, why do I have to deal with that? Why can't my wife learn about my culture? Well, plain answer to that question is, why should she? She is here on her home patch. This is her country. This is where she lives. This is where she's lived all of her life. And I'm the foreigner. She's not the foreigner. And until she is the foreigner, why would it be that I would be able to change everything that she does? It's not going to happen. So part of my plan to have a happy life with a happy wife is that I'm going to have to accept the way. Now, how is she? One of the biggest points of disagreement between a Westerner and a Filipina in this case, probably it applies to a lot of different cultures, but we're talking about the Philippines, so let's keep it to Filipina and a foreigner, wherever the foreigner is from. Right, now, just a simple thing like whether what she is saying to you is the actual case. If you say to your wife, have you done the dishes? Now, if she says yes, does it mean that the dishes are done? No, it doesn't. Because a Filipina who is not speaking her first language may not know past, present and future tense. So when that question is put to her, it covers a great deal of ground which it doesn't cover for you as a Westerner. What you're talking about is, did you do, past tense, is it in the past, are the dishes done? That doesn't handle it for your wife, who is thinking past, present and future all rolled in one. And that's how it works. So your question would cover, are you about to do you intend to do, will you do, she's answering to a million different views of the same question, and you have just that one fixed, correct, tense idea of what the question is. Now, I've chosen just the dishes because it's inconsequential, isn't it? It's nothing. What we're talking about is a different way of thinking. Their hardwiring is all a done deal. Now, at one time, they used to think that a child would reach the age of reason, and it used to be, I think at one time it used to be as low as 8, it used to be as high as 8 years old. Now 8 years old was when, by 8 years old, the child would have made some quite important decisions, probably about what he wanted to do with his life, whether he wanted to get married, whether he wanted to be a father or a mother. All of those decisions would have been made by that time. But now they're realizing that it's very possible that some of these major decisions have been reached by the age of 2 years old. And my suspicion is that it may end up being a lot lower, earlier. So in other words, A child may well have made some very important decisions about its life as low as a year old. I'm going out on a limb now. A year old. That little 12-month-old kid that's at your knee may have made some important decisions already about how his life, her life is going to be. And we have to understand, when we come here as foreigners, we have to understand how long the behavior patterns of our wife have been established. Now, are we going to come over here and sit across the dining room table and say, honey, this is the way that I think it should be? And are we going to expect that that's going to be the case? Excuse me. It's not going to happen. It's not real to think that it can happen. So everything is different when you get here. Now you can come over here, and the majority of foreigners that I know, that I come up against, have already made up their mind that they're point zero. Everything is as they say it is, and the Filipinos are wrong. Now, sure that there'll be guys out there now who are saying, well, you're just being a wimp, or you're being a loser. I get this on the side, right? But I'm actually being realistic, and I'm being logical, because if you've made up your mind that you're going to come and live in a different culture, if you've made up your mind that you can be happier here, if you've made up your mind by watching the way that people behave here and respond and are happier than you, then you're going to be the one who will make the change. Is this going to be easy? Oh yes, of course it is. Aren't things always easy? Yeah, I don't think so. See, the way that you think and the way that you do things is ingrained, and you think that way, and it's not going to move easily. It's not going to be an easy job. So, if you really want to find out why Filipinos are happier, and I think it's a given that they are, then you're going to have to start thinking about changing yourself. Now, whenever anything goes wrong here in my life, I am inclined to jump to a conclusion and work it out from my point zero why everything has gone wrong. Well, nobody kept their agreements. I mean, we said that my hammer was not going to be moved, and now my hammer's gone, and I'm looking for my hammer. And my wife doesn't move a second. She doesn't move a bit. She says, I'll find it. And she does that calmly. And if I say, why is my hammer not in the place that I left it? She smiles and says, oh, don't worry, I'll find it. And then she calls out to her mother, Nanay. Meanwhile, I am on the boil. My damn hammer should be where I put it. It's my hammer. I'm the one that's getting upset. Am I the only one that's seeing what's wrong with this picture? It's just a hammer. It's just something that somebody else needed in my chosen family community, and they took it and they used it. Is it important? Damn right it's important. It's my hammer, and I want my hammer to be where I put it, and I don't want anybody else to take my hammer. About 15 minutes later, when I don't even get a chance to use the hammer that's returned to me, I begin thinking about the hammer and thinking, you know what, I don't really care about the hammer. Why did I get so upset? Well, because I'm self-righteous. Because I'm point zero. Doesn't anybody keep any agreement? It's the principle of the thing. All of these preconceived ideas that are in my learned behavior all come bursting to the surface with steam blowing out of my ears. Nobody else has given a damn. Give the man his hammer. My mother-in-law is laughing. My brother-in-law is smiling and saying, it's just a hammer. And they're right. This is the point, is that they are correct within their culture. Now, why is that important? Well, excuse me, I'm tapping myself on the shoulder here. You decided to come and live with them. They didn't go over and knock on your door and ask you to change. You came here. So, who's going to have to change? My view is this. I'm point zero. And everybody else in the Philippines is going to have to change. I'm going to teach them. I'm going to show them that there's a world out there. Somebody actually said this to me. It's not just the Philippines, it's the world. And everybody is going to be looking at the Filipinos and they're going to be saying they don't do this and they don't do that. Oh, God. It's not going to bring you happiness right now. You're here. You're in the Philippines. You have a Filipino wife. She has a Filipino family. She has brothers and sisters. In some close families, she would die for them. So, when ordinary things come up like, your hammer's gone, what you do is you say, honey, where's my hammer? And she says, I'll find it. You say, where's my saw? She says, just a moment. Nanay? And then she asks, Nanay, where's the saw? And it's not your saw, it's the saw. The hammer. It's those things which are there to be, and there to be used for the common good. So, unless you want to have a locked toolbox and have everybody thinking, oh, what's the big deal, it's just a hammer, then you're going to have to live as the foreigner, isolated from the rest of the world. And if you think that you can come over here and not learn the language, and I'm guilty of this, I haven't worked on learning the language. When you sit round the dining room table and everybody's having fun, talking, joking, laughing, and you have to keep saying to your wife, what? What happened? What was that? Who said that? What? I heard my name. What was said? You're the one that's going to do that. Now, shouldn't they be polite and all speak in English? No. You're here in the Philippines. Learn the damn language. That's the bottom line. Because if you were in your own country, be it Germany, the UK, America, wherever, and you were having a conversation at the dining room table, and there was one man who didn't speak your language, but you all did, would you all change and stumble through this second language just for one person who has been here several years and refuses to learn the language? No. So, be prepared for big change. Be prepared for giving up point zero, which you never owned anyway. Learn the language, study the people, and ask yourself why things are as they are. Why does it seem that this people that you've come to join Don't get worried about things like you do. Don't get stressed about things. Don't give a damn about the hammer. And find out what is their secret. In America, they say that the pursuit of happiness is the big thing. And here you are, you've fled from that environment to a place where they're not apparently seeking happiness, because even though they'd like to be more comfortable, better off, richer, wealthier, more prosperous, they're not unhappy and they're not stressed out the same as you certainly were when you were in that country that you have fled from. So now you're here, try learning, try changing, try giving up the point zero that you never had anyway, and finding out why it is. Probably this has been too long a video, but what the heck. You may learn and you may not. You may be quite indignant about the fact that, well, this is a backward people, so they've got to change. And you may be right. Or not.